Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Well, you know, the sun's been shining ever since Hillary's disappeared off the radar. That's delightful. It really is delightful. And your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. Broadcasting 2 hours daily, Monday through Friday, from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. The listen line's working, or at least it was last time I checked. 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. Captain John Ragan's with us. Welcome, Captain John Ragan.
Good morning, Vincent.
Hey, is it Monday? Already?
Nasty rumor.
You know, that's the opening line, class. When John and I chat, I'll call him up and I'll go, "Is it Monday already?" Hey, it's great to hear your voice. So, anything new that you want to share?
Oh boy, I've got some comments about the election, but I'm going to hold off on that until the second hour because I want to use some of the things that we're going to cover during the first hour as a foundation.
Sure. I'm ready when you are.
Are you sure?
I think so. I was at thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. Also, EZE33.com. That'll get you there as well.
.org.
Go to .org, EZE33.org. And you can follow along in class on the internet. So I'm ready.
Okay. If you just scroll down a little bit to last week's post, there were some things we didn't get to in hour two that specifically were more spy tech related, and I wanted to catch up on those. And the first one is entitled New Sensor. And this sensor is so sensitive, it can detect the beat of insect wings. It's fairly small, a little bit larger than a nickel. It basically measures gas flow. Very small changes in gas flow, of course. If you think of an insect's wings, that's not a lot of movement. And while this article discusses medical uses of this, which definitely could be useful, I'm thinking about, what if the Nazis had this in World War II? You think about the people that were hidden away in secret compartments. And if you had a sensor like this that could detect very small changes in airflow, how could you possibly hide from the Nazi oppression given this technology? And if that doesn't give you pause, then I don't think you understand what Nazi Germany was like.
Well, I'm thinking about what you're saying, and I'm thinking about the spying that goes on. And I mentioned last week, John, that our smart meter stopped working, stopped transmitting. and we got an estimated bill which was about twice as high as it should have been. And I challenged, well, first of all, Mrs. Finelli challenged the electric company. I was really impressed that she stood her ground with the electric company, but she got nowhere. And so I made a phone call to the electric company, and, you know, in the standard Colombo model, I just, you know, I want to help. I just don't understand so many things. So I had all my facts and figures in front of me, and I explained to the gal on the other end of the phone that I was absolutely not going to pay their estimated bill because it was wrong. And I explained that it was wrong because the actual reading on the meter was lower than the estimated reading by far, and that I would pay my estimate, not their estimate, but the one that I thought was reasonable. And ultimately, I was able to talk to the supervisor in that particular department. And ultimately, we agreed on a number which was very, very close to my number, not their number. And they decided that they would send someone out to, you know, check the meter. Well, I said, well, okay, but that'll be on, you know, a time that's convenient for me, and I'll have to let you in because the gate's locked. Well, they called, and I said, you know, I have to call ahead of time, let us know exactly when. And they called and said, we'll be there in about 45 minutes. Is that okay? And I said, sure. They said they'd be coming. Well, they did. They brought one of those really heavy-duty trucks with the telescoping bucket. Now, our meter's on the ground. So they bought this big, massive truck. And to guide that truck, they had another truck. And so as these vehicles are approaching the farmhouse, I'm standing there in absolute amazement. And I'm counting as best I could. I said, 1, 2. Wow, it's 2. I got my fingers up. 2 fingers, one for each truck. And then as the trucks got closer, I counted on my fingers. I said, 1, 2. And then I leaned into this, opened the first truck that showed up. I leaned into the window and I said, 3, 4. Wow, you guys sent 4 guys. 4 guys. 4. Now I know why our electric bill's so high. They weren't going to take any chances with me, so they sent 2 teams to show up to fix this transmitter. And what did it take? It took the replacement of a circuit board, and it was a screwdriver changeover. But because they were dealing with high voltage, they brought the linemen, 2 linemen, and 2 people. So, John, what I'm telling you is there is no expense that these government-related spying industry or these companies are doing. They're not sparing any expense to make sure that they can monitor our activities. So you are absolutely, positively correct that we should be concerned about the spying. But we had it our way, and I asked them to replace the meter with an old-fashioned analog meter, and they said they couldn't do it. Bottom line is we're being spied on every way you can think of, and they do not want to miss a beat, so they're willing to send 2 trucks. Now, these are 2 brand-new trucks. I mean, whatever happened to the days when, there was cost-effectiveness? And, I drive a vehicle at 12 years old. 12 years old. I have another vehicle that's 16 years old, 17 years old. Our tractors are from the 1980s, even the 1970s. We even have a little tractor that's from the 1960s, and we use them. And we make our equipment last. I guess we can do things that these corporations can't do. We can take care of our equipment. Back to you, John.
Well, right below that is diamonds are forever.
Yeah.
And this came from a team of physicists from the City University of New York, posted through Sputnik News, that they've been able to use diamonds to store data. So we're looking at a storage medium that can last for extremely long amounts of time and store quite a bit of data. And this also got me to wondering, because we read about certain stones in the Bible, and we've talked about some of the ancient technology that used to be, kind of makes me wonder if some of those stones are more than just decorative. Could they possibly contain data as well? But either way, it's a new level of consideration in the tech world, where you can have this basically atom-sized storage of information, which is just going to give them further ability to keep information on us.
As you say that, John, I was thinking about, how many women have diamond rings, engagement rings on their finger, and then how much data could that store? And then as you were saying this, I was thinking, what about implanting that diamond, under the skin and accessing it as a thumb drive? Can you imagine the possibilities for additional spying, and data could be on the move, and people could be hired to store data, and they wouldn't even, maybe they might know it, maybe they might not, but carrying around massive amounts of data with them, and we'd never know where it is, right? Because how do you find a diamond? Electromagnetically? I don't think so. Would a scanner detect it? I don't know, but I don't think so. Interesting possibilities, and I wish they'd knock it off. I wish they'd knock off this non-stop pursuit of finding everything they can out about us. I don't like it, and John, I was thinking, Sears. Well, are we going to talk about Sears later?
I believe we're going to be able to get there.
Okay, all right. Let's hold off my thoughts on Sears until we get there, and it relates to spying. Okay, back to you.
And let's go down computer secrets. Google has been teaching its neural networks some new tricks, and the computers can now keep secrets. They're learning to encrypt their own messages, so it may be to the point where we can no longer tell what the computer is thinking.
Wouldn't it be interesting if Google, the company we learn to love because of its search engine capabilities, becomes the company we love to hate? Wouldn't that be interesting? We'll be right back. Hey, John, RK Gun Shows. RK's got 3 shows coming up, November 19th and 20th. November 19 and 20. Wichita, Kansas, Cartersville, Georgia, and Nashville, Tennessee. One more time. Wichita, Kansas, Cartersville, Georgia, Nashville, Tennessee, rkshows.com. Okay, John, what's next?
Again, we're in last week's post, hour number 2 section. Down near the bottom of that, I've got a post called Judge, Jury, ... And they have this artificial intelligent judge predicting the results of human rights trials with a 79% accuracy. And while the researchers don't think that the AIs will be replacing judges or lawyers, I think they're a little bit delusional, because all of these professions that are nice, high-paying positions right now, the doctors, the lawyers, the CPAs, where they're working with more information that is also changing much faster than humans can keep up with. Those are ideal to be replaced with artificial intelligence that don't have to sleep. They have the capacity to research these thousands upon thousands of regulations. And then you add in, the machine can't be bribed. They don't have an emotion, so they can't be swayed. They're going to be impartial. So I really believe that we will be seeing these artificial intelligences replacing judges and lawyers sooner than people would like to believe.
So, John, we actually shift the bribing from the judges to the programmers, right? We bribe the programmers.
The programmers tend not to have very much control over these AIs. They set them up to where they learn on their own. And from that point, right now, the best you can do is pull the plug. You don't really get to go in and change programs much in the way that we're used to writing programs. Now, you could go in, you still got the bribery side on, the making of the laws. However, I can also see where we would replace Congress with artificial intelligence. That almost seems like an oxymoron there, especially given representatives like Sheila Jackson Lee, but let's not diverge. But you could have the computers determining, what is good law and what isn't.
Interesting concept. I really don't like the idea of humans being replaced with robots and artificial intelligence. I'm very, very concerned about that because theoretically it could run amok, and we could be at their mercy, or at its mercy, I should say, and have to pull the plug. Interesting thought.
And at the bottom of hour 2, years without a battery. And this comes out of work being done at the University of Cambridge. Engineers design ultra-low power transistors that could function for years without a battery. And in reading the article, they'd be able to put these types of transistors on just about any kind of material, from glass to plastic, polyester, and paper. So you can imagine where they could plant these processors to do their dirty work, not even need a power source. And to give you an idea of just how effective these are power-wise, the quote is, if we were to draw energy from a typical AA battery based on this design, it would last for 1 billion years.
Mm-hmm. And that brings to mind something that happened in elementary school back in the 60s with batteries. I'll tell you about that and how it relates to us as humans and how we can generate electricity for these devices. We'll be right back. John, you're talking about low power consumption solid-state devices. And when I was in elementary school, and I'm sure many of us have done this, we've made a voltaic cell or a galvanic cell out of a strip of zinc and a strip of copper in let's say some kind of electrolyte, and it worked. And you could measure the voltage. And so what I did was I found out that 2 dissimilar metals sandwiched with an electrolyte between them would produce electricity. So simply what I did was I cut little pieces of paper towel about the size of a postage stamp, but they were round, and I sandwiched them in between a copper penny and a dime, a 90% silver dime. And if I added salt water to that paper towel, I could measure voltage between the dime and the penny. And if I added alternating copper, penny, dime, penny, dime, penny, dime, penny, dime, and sandwich them with these pieces of paper towel soaked in salt water, I could increase the voltage. Now, what I'm trying to say is, based on what you were saying, John, of this article, I have a feeling that we can implant into our bodies some kind of a sandwich of dissimilar metals and create that stack of galvanic cells or voltaic cells and power these devices that use very little current. Now, for a pacemaker, that might be a good thing. But for other purposes, it might be a bad thing, right?
I think you get it.
Yeah. So now we don't have to worry about that double A cell or that triple A cell or that 9-volt battery or the C-size battery, the D-size cell or C-size cell. Well, we can make our own. And how long would it last? Well, as long as we last. A lifetime. Whatever that may be. Man, I'm a little concerned about that. However, there were some great strides when we went from the vacuum tube, which consumed an enormous amount of power and generated a considerable amount of heat, down to the solid-state devices, which did not use anywhere near the amount of current or power and did not generate anywhere near the amount of heat. So we made some strides, but now I think we're talking about getting down to body-based batteries or body-based cells to power these devices. I'm kind of speechless. I don't know what to say. I'm concerned.
Well,
and I think
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I think I mentioned once on this broadcast, maybe twice, that Bert Bertonis and I created a press release, and it was all fiction for April Fool's Day, 1980, and we sent out this press release to a lot of major publications that we invented this thing, and it would let you communicate. It was an interface. You just plug a computer into your interface connection. Maybe it was on your arm, but we never really said where it was. That you could participate, be an actor in a movie, and this interface would let the device, let's say a computer, show a movie in your mind. So you and the computer would be connected, and it was hailed as one of the great claims that never materialized. But now we're getting close. That was in 1980, and for us it was just a joke. We were just having fun. A couple guys with too much time on their hands. Back to you.
I just wanted to quickly make a comment for those that were listening during the commercial break. 5-Star Soap, which is Cal-Ben, which is based out of California. I've been a customer of theirs for probably about a decade now. I've really liked their products, and just wanted to pass along that this month they do have a special on their shampoo for just $26 a gallon. And this is concentrated, so you don't have to use as much of it as you would ordinary shampoo. So it's good stuff. The only caveat I'd say is if you're one of those people that don't like coconut, you would not like the shampoo because it is based off of coconut oil and does have a coconut aroma. But we're very happy with it, and I just wanted to pass that along for anybody who wants to take advantage of it.
Yeah, this is what you're doing is not a commercial. This is an endorsement, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. John, how long will a gallon of shampoo last you and your wife?
It's less than a year because, Becky has long hair and I've been going with a beard, so we're having to use more than what we used to. If you order their year supply of soap, you get a gallon in that. And it just depends on how your family uses things, how long the soap and the bar soap and the dishwashing soap and the laundry soap lasts. But I have not found a product in their soap line that I don't care about.
Okay, and how do you transfer it into another bottle in the shower or the tub? What do you do? Because a gallon will be unwieldy.
You're right. It comes with a small bottle. I don't remember. Probably holds 12 or 16 ounces.
Okay.
So you put it in that, and it's got the top that you flip, and so it's more like an ordinary shampoo bottle at that point.
Okay. Very good.
Well, before we leave last week, I do want to touch a little bit on the employment section, because they came out with the latest lies before the election. And I want to talk about the part-time wins link. Multiple job holders hit 21st century high as full-time jobs plummet. They were expecting to get about 173,000 jobs. Instead, it only rose by 161. But because they took 5 million people out of the workforce, they were able to lower the unemployment rate to try to get Hillary elected. And going back to the September household survey, the number of part-time workers increased by 430,000 as full-time workers declined by 5,000. In October, which is what this last report was, another 103,000 full-time jobs were lost and had a 90,000 increase in part-time jobs. Of course, this is all given to us courtesy of Obamacare. Hopefully some of that will get reversed early next year. And at least maybe a little bit of the pain will start to be eased.
John, are you seeing some sunshine in Texas? Because literally it's been more sunny than before the election. Are you noticing that, or is it just me in our neck of the woods?
Well, it's I think a lot of people, except the young that don't know any better because of their indoctrination, are happy about the way things went. Unfortunately, it doesn't change a lot of things, and like I say, I want to hold off till next hour to get into that. But I think people, for the most part, are happy the way things are, and I'm sure we're not going to be totally thrilled with everything that the new administration does, but I do believe that we're not going to be attacked as much as we have for...
No, I meant, what I was saying is literally, it's sunnier. I mean, I'm looking out the window right now, and it's bright and sunny.
Right. Well, depending on where you are, we're definitely in an area of high pressure. Unfortunately, that's also contributing to drought. And we're looking at some unusual temperatures this week, going up to even 80 degrees. Mm-hmm. So, this is the middle of November. It's supposed to be cooling down, and it looks like it will be, but there's also been a change in the weather pattern where it looks like we're getting a La Nina this year, which means that the South is looking to be dry, and goes to the weather pattern where you get the dryness where you don't want it because it needs water, and you're getting other places that are warmer, which can start messing with agriculture. So, like pretty much everything, there's a trade-off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason I say that is I was doing a Hillary maneuver yesterday afternoon. I was on the old tractor, and I was going around in circles spreading manure. And, I was... and I was having a good old time with this chain harrow pulling it behind the tractor. It's 10 feet wide. It's way too small, and I'd like to have a bigger one, but I don't know how I'd get it through a gate. But, I was enjoying the sunshine. I had just a hooded fleece jacket on and a pullover, if you will. And it was great being out there. It really was. And this is November, and it's kind of unheard of for having this warm of weather here in November. We just turned the heat on a couple of days ago, and I don't mean on a lot. I mean just barely using any heat at all. And I don't remember it being this warm and at this time in November in my entire life. So there's something to this global warming, absolutely, positively, at least from my perspective. Captain John Ragan, I'll be right back. If you'd like to follow along with us, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com or eze33.org. We'll be right back. Captain John Ragan's with us, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. John, there's a post, Drudge Report, China fires its first warning shot, warning iPhone sales will suffer if Trump starts a trade war. And so Donald Trump has talked about a tariff on Chinese imports. And so Apple phones are made in China. And where are we going to get our Apple phones? Well, as a matter of fact, it doesn't affect me at all. Not at all. And wouldn't that be nice if we started manufacturing products in the United States because of a tax on imported goods, and that will bring the jobs back to the United States. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, unfortunately, like we talked about last week, we had an example of a factory that came back, and instead of employing hundreds of people, I believe it was about a dozen that it employed for its 7-day-a-week schedule.
Right, robots, right? Managing the robots, the AI. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a problem. And, we'll be talking about Sears when we come back from going into hour number 2. What's next?
Well, we could probably get into that right now. Get into this week's resources. The first 3 links under financial have to deal with retail. We have Sears looking to have problems because suppliers are concerned that Sears, which also has Kmart, could go into bankruptcy, so they're not wanting to ship as much product for their Christmas inventory. You have Macy's, who had net income fall by 87%, and it's the 7th straight quarter of declines in both profits and sales. And Fossil, they're looking at closing stores after a 70% profit loss. And I'm not sure any of these old-style companies are going to make it. They were late to the e-commerce table, and they really don't have anything to offer.
Yep. And I think that maybe some of these brick and mortar companies are suffering because those of us who understand the spy technology don't want to go into malls. We don't want to go into Sears. We don't want to be on camera from the minute we drive into the parking lot and travel through the store and buy whatever we may end up buying from them. And there's another thing, and that is the tax. If we can, in Springfield, Missouri, and in the surrounding area, the tax is 8%, around 8%. And who wants to pay 8% sales tax on something from a store when you can have it shipped and maybe pay less in shipping than you would in tax? Who wants to go to a store anyway? And the surveillance is a problem. And I think that maybe some of these brick and mortar stores ought to start fighting back about the surveillance and the tracking of customers through their credit card purchases, through their tracking of people's movements with their cell phones within the malls. I mean, these are reasons why I'm not interested in going shopping at a mall or at Sears. And John, I went, had a few minutes. Our son was with me, and I thought, you know what? Let's go into Sears. So we stopped at Harbor Freight first. Needed to get a tool for a job we were doing, and a specialty tool. Went into Harbor Freight, looked at the wrenches and their sockets and a lot of their tools. And then we went into Sears, went into the tool department, the Craftsman tool department. And what did we see? It looked like the wrenches, the Craftsman wrenches that have a very distinctive pattern. distinctive size, distinctive shape, distinctive stamping, were replaced. Many of them were replaced with these tools that looked exactly like the Chinese factory tool outlet, which is Harbor Freight. That's my term for Harbor Freight tools. The same tools. I believe they're identical. And instead of saying Pittsburgh, which is a Harbor Freight brand, they say Craftsman. And I looked at some of the individual tools hanging on the rack, and some of them are made in Asia. We're talking Craftsman, Asian manufactured Craftsman tools. Sears has lost their way. Why would anybody spend more for a tool that comes from Sears than getting it someplace else for less and having the same tool? Why would anybody do that? Especially when they have the same guarantee. Sears has lost its way. We'll be right back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Captain John Ragan's with us. John Ragan, I'm looking at a sign that says, "Welcome to the Utah Data Center." This is where they store information about us. And then below the welcome to the Utah Data Center, it says, "If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear." Where have we heard that kind of language before?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you ready for the rest of the good news I have?
I am ready. I'm ready.
I'm going to continue down the financial section for today because it's a lead up to talking about the election results. We have bonds down $1 trillion and 5% bonds coming. And in fact, we just heard over the news break that the bond yields are going up. And whenever the yields go up, the value of the bonds themselves go down. It's an inverse relationship. It's mathematical. That's the way the bond market works. It's different than the stock market in that respect. And since the election, over $1 trillion in bond losses. It's the worst price decline in bonds since the 1981 market crash, and it looks like it might even be getting worse. And if you think that's bad enough, keep in mind all those trillions of dollars worth of derivatives, and as near as we can tell, it's about $500 trillion worth of derivatives are bets on interest rates. And if those start getting triggered with these changes in interest rates, things can start rolling downhill rather quickly. And if that's not enough to concern you with just what's happening now, Greenspan predicts bond yields rising as high as 5%, which is still, I'd say, a little bit below normal. And what's the implications of that? Well, one, we just talked about, it crashes the bond market. But two, we're financing the debt of the federal government at a very low rate. And they're being financed mostly with short-term debt. So it turns over rather quickly. So changes in interest rates start having an effect faster than most people would expect. And just to use round numbers, a $20 trillion federal debt, financing that debt at 5% interest is a whole $1 trillion a year just to pay the interest. And that gets awfully darn close to what the government brings in personal business, or just the personal income taxes. It gets unsustainable quickly. We've reported that the last fiscal year that the government went an additional $1 trillion into debt. And it's not just that debt. It's like I say, we have several $1 trillion that comes up for renewal. So it's not just $1 trillion they're having to finance for the year. It's several trillion, and that doesn't even count the trillions in business debt that is rolled over. So if the credit market seizes up or even just increases interest rates, that has a big ripple throughout the entire economy.
I was thinking about Sears, John. Yeah, I was thinking about Sears. And Sears is concerned about getting inventory so for Christmas. And if they're concerned about getting inventory for Christmas, if the the cost of borrowing money goes up, Sears suppliers would probably be reining in some of their inventory, not letting Sears have it on credit, right? Wouldn't that happen? Which would just make the situation even worse. And that's just one small example, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so raising interest rates is bad for sales, isn't it?
Well, it's a double-edged sword because they went so low with interest rates that did great damage to the pension funds. Now, if you just try to raise the interest rates back to a normal level, that's good for the pension funds, but ends up being bad for the rest of the economy. It's a tangled web, and this is some of the joy that you get in taking a finance course.
Yeah, I wanted to get a refund on mine, 6 years worth. Okay, what's next?
Well,
I'm not kidding.
I'll go off the links I have. I wanted to talk a bit about the election, and I'm as happy as anybody about not having the witch in office and all the damage she would do. But there is nothing that Trump can do to stop the financial collapse. It's like I've been saying for years now. It's like you're driving. I guess you can get in the picture in your mind of the Thelma and Louise scene where the car's heading towards the edge of the cliff. And you get to a point that no matter how hard you slam on your brakes, you're still going to go over the cliff. And while I wish I guess there would be an alternative, but it would take such a change in lifestyle and people, including Christians, deciding to do things God's way, which I don't see happening. And especially I think for those of us that remember the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s time frame, we can't go back to an America like that. I kind of wish we could. It wasn't perfect, but there were a lot of things that were a lot nicer than what we experience today. And besides that, we've got demographics changes, which is even tougher to talk about without having visuals. And to try and go back, yes, that situation's hopeless. To try to go forward without a financial collapse, no, we can't avoid that. And I think that's why we're here at USA Prepares, because we want to try to give you education about what you can do, at least for your family and those you love. And, like I said, I wish we could do better, but let's look at what has not changed. One thing that hasn't changed is the unfunded liability problem of Social Security and Medicare. If you look at the financial report of the United States, the auditors will not sign off on the unfunded liability section because it doesn't conform to GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. And even at that, it's still saying that we need more than $70 trillion. When you look at a GAAP representation of those numbers, it's over $100 trillion, which is more than all the money in the world. But when you look at the assumptions that were used in that, very poor assumptions. That's described in my book, The Financial State of the Union. And Professor Kotlikov uses the Congressional Budget Office's alternate fiscal scenario, which uses at least some more realistic, and I think this too over-optimistic numbers, but it's still not as rosy as what's used in the Financial Report of the United States. And Professor Kotlikov comes up with a number that's over 200 trillion. In fact, his last report was 206 trillion. And that's more than twice all the money in the world. And that's not what it takes to, what we need to pay out. That's what we need today, earning 5.7% interest in order to pay for those items into the future. So even if that much money existed, you then have the problem of where do you invest it to get that 5.7% return? It's an impossible situation, and it's, short of getting rid of Social Security and Medicare, that problem is not going away. But that's not what is going to take us down. We have the pension funds, which we've already talked about how they're popping, and it's probably going to get much worse. And they're only a few $1 trillion compared to the 100 or 200 trillion that we've talked about for Social Security and Medicare. And in addition to what's listed for Social Security and Medicare, no matter which one you're using, the 100 trillion or 200 trillion, neither one of those takes into account the job losses that's coming because of robotics and artificial intelligence. When you start losing those millions of jobs, and some of those are pretty good paying jobs, they can't all become waiters, even getting the low paying jobs. That's going to cause a lot less money to go into Social Security, Medicare, and pension funds. The situation is just going to accelerate, getting worse. I can't tell you when it's going to happen, what the final straw is, but it's coming.
John, you have not wavered one iota on that position about the financial collapse is absolute certainty, and we don't know when. But class, why don't you prepare as if you really believe it's going to happen? Because I do. Captain John Ragan, and I'll be right back. Captain John Reagan's with us, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com, and I'm at the news tab.
Well, I want to continue on with the election for just a tad more. I've been saying that we'll see a financial collapse unless World War III ends first. And that still hasn't changed, but some probabilities have changed because of the election. Had Hillary won, I think it would be very likely that we'd be going to war with Russia, because Trump is coming in. It looks like, even if Barry tries some provocation, that Russia would probably restrain itself, because they don't want war, but if war is inevitable, they're going to strike first and go for the win. We still have issues of, we could have terrorist attacks where a country like Iran or North Korea could, park the freighter off the coast and launch an EMP attack. We could have a group of terrorists come in, and if they know what the 9 large transformers are or where they're located, they could launch an attack and take those out, bring down the grid. Cyber attack is still on the table. But again, if that would be a major player like Russia or China, and they would not like the retaliation. And as the wild card, we still have the possibility of the sun sending off a coronal mass ejection. And just as a reminder, the Carrington event occurred during a solar minimum, and that's what we're going into. So we're not totally out of the woods on the grid down side of things, but it does reduce the odds of that happening, at least in the near term. Now, that brings up the other side I've talked about. If we don't have grid down, then we get an expansion of all this lovely technology that we've been talking about. So when the financial collapse comes, how likely is it that a President Trump would go to war to divert the attention from the problems? I think he's less likely to do that. I think he'd be looking at ways of trying to have international agreement to combat the bad economic times. And whether you like it or not, that gets into more and more of this wonderful technology with all the surveillance and control attached to it. And even if by some miracle we could get the Congress, the President, and the courts of the United States to ban the use of technology for the purposes that we don't like, that still leaves the rest of the world with the technology. And as we're finding out, it's getting to be into smaller and smaller packages, which makes it easier and easier to bring into the country and deploy. So that type of technology would still likely be used, even if made illegal by the United States government. And unfortunately, with the win, most of the people that voted for Trump more than likely will think they've done their duty and that the Republicans are going to take care of things, and they can go back to sleep, go back to planning the Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it's this time of year where a lot of people tune out of the news cycle and won't pick up again until probably around inauguration time. So I'm going to be dialing back my news a little bit to try and work on content to get ready to present when people start paying attention to what's going on in the world.
Yep, and Rich Sheehan's going to be with us tomorrow, specifically on what you're talking about, John Ragan, and that is what we can do. What can the villagers do to help President-elect Donald Trump save our nation? We'll be right back. Captain John Ragan's with us. I just have a comment about these protests. So we've got thousands of people coast to coast taking to the streets and protesting the selection of Donald Trump. And so we've got from New England to Kansas City and to the West Coast, we've got traffic disrupting protests. And these are people who refuse to accept the selection of Donald Trump. And I just have this question that I'd like to ask those who are protesting. About 2,500 people, Americans, 2,500 Americans have died in Afghanistan and Iraq under the President Obama administration, of which Hillary Clinton was part. Why are you protesting Donald Trump? How many people has he killed? Nobody that I know of. Just asking. Kyle in Montana, welcome. You're on with Captain John Ragan.
Good morning, gentlemen. I just had a quick question for John. John, I see that, I know what all the things that you're saying, and I see it coming just like you. But I'm curious as to why do you think the stock market has been skyrocketing, to all-time highs, and at the same time, gold and silver has been plummeting. And I'm curious with, not too much changing, what is there out there that, because I'm not online, what is there out there that is causing this as far as you can see?
We still live in a manipulated market. And until there's, I'd say, more transparency in the gold and silver markets, you're going to see this type of volatility where paper gold and silver is being used to manipulate the prices of real gold and silver. The stock markets are looking ahead, and there's some expectation, especially with the belief that interest rates are going to go up, that there will be another round of QE. And when you look at the past, that QE has gone into propping up the stock market.
Okay, so, but if there is this interest rate rise, do you think, like the Fed, I'm talking about the Federal Reserve, probably is going to raise interest rates probably a quarter point, I would think, in December. What effect will that have, do you think, on the stock market?
It's hard to say. In the near term, almost anything can happen, and what you think should be a negative drag can quite often turn around and go the other way. And what you think is positive news can turn around and bring things down. That's why it's so difficult to try and predict what the stock market's going to do. You pretty much have to pick individual stocks, know them, understand their trend, and go with the psychology that's going on at the time.
John, also there's a general trend, a flight toward safety in perilous times, and one of those trends would be to move toward precious metals during those times of danger. And there is an illusion that there's not much danger anymore, right? Because Donald Trump has been selected. And I think that's part of it. Do you agree?
I believe so. They believe that there's going to be, some smoother sailing ahead, some changes in laws and regulations that would allow for certain things to happen, especially for the energy industry, where we may see coal plants come back.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for oil. Unfortunately, the economy is so bad, even with improved opportunities for oil. And I've got a couple of articles today. Toyota and Nissan say the automotive market's going sideways, and GM is cutting 2,000 jobs. Things are not good in the auto segment.
My understanding is that some of the Japanese manufacturers are reducing the amount of exports into the United States in terms of automobiles. Is that true?
Well, yes, and there's a combination of factors. We've talked about the student loan problem. We've got over $1 trillion worth of student loan debt now. And then we also have the graduates either not finding jobs or not finding jobs in their area, and they don't have the money that previous generations had. So in addition, you've got that demographics change where you've got a smaller population from the baby boomers that would be using cars. And as the baby boomers retire, a lot of times they go down from, say 2 cars to 1 car because they don't need 2 cars because you don't have 2 people going in different directions for work. So all of that is factoring into this car and light truck problem.
Mm-hmm. And there's a post that you linked to that says Toyota and Nissan say the U.S. auto market has peaked. And that's on Bloomberg Markets. And so they paired their forecast by 60,000 vehicles. That's Toyota.
Merry Christmas.
Kyle, that was a great question about the market. Excellent question.
The other thing I was wondering, John, is that because we've seen things, like the parallels between the 1929 crash and this one, and I'm wondering if all of these things aren't setting up some kind of a huge crash to take everybody off guard because everybody's down. And I'm like you guys, I'm kind of breathing a sigh of relief here for a week or two and letting this sink in, but I've not stopped anything as far as getting ready as much as I possibly can. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are about, what about setting this thing up with everybody, because everybody's looking on the level of, well, maybe there's jobs coming, maybe there's going to be more construction, and those kind of things. But at the same time, there's this looming financial dire straits that we're entering into that nobody sees. And I'm just curious, because the Bank of Germany, I'm sure, is still not any better off. And if that goes, then, something causing the collapse to start that way.
And we've got other banks in Europe, Italy, Greece, Spain. It's not good. Keep in mind, we've also got Japan has been having problems for a couple of decades, and nothing they've tried has worked. So yes, there's a number of different directions this can come from. Like I've been saying, they can take it down anytime just by raising the interest rate. But I'm looking at what might they do, and this is just pure conjecture on my part. I'm thinking that right now they wouldn't want to make a change, let Obama leave office, get Trump in there, and then wait about 6 weeks or so, getting beyond the attention span of most of the people before they even try anything. And that way they want to get as much blamed on Trump as possible.
All righty, gentlemen. Thanks. That's all I had, Vince. Thanks.
Very good, Kyle. Thank you. And Kyle, thank you for sharing with our class that you have not slowed down on your preparation efforts, and neither have I. I'm continuing to prepare and to brace for the worst. I don't think that the selection of Donald Trump has really, it's changed some attitudes. It's changed people's outlook so that they may have more hope, real hope, as compared to Barry's hope. But if you think about it, think about all those shovel-ready jobs that Barry and the bandits had promised us. We haven't even made the shovels, let alone the jobs to men and women, the shovels, right, John?
Right, and I do think that we get to look forward to not having an assault on our gun rights, that these, especially the criminal illegals will be deported, some nice positive things happening. But it's, my point is there's nothing he can do with the financial problem. If he manages to spark the economy a little bit, maybe that makes a few months difference, but we're just so deep in debt that we can't take any more debt. And if interest rates actually do go up, then that makes the debt service even worse at a time when we're already short on income.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, John,
I had a question
I've got another question for you, John, real quick. What would happen if Trump gets mad at the Federal Reserve and were to turn around and nationalize that? What would that accomplish?
Not really a whole lot when it comes to, it would put the control of the interest rate under the government versus the Fed. What kind of change that would make, I think not very much. When it comes to printing the money, the only difference between a United States note and a Federal Reserve note is the United States note, you don't have to pay interest on that. But the way that the agreement is made with the Federal Reserve is the interest we pay, a certain amount of that gets back to the Treasury, because that's the way it's set up is that interest is used to pay for the expenses of the Federal Reserve. And once you get above that, it goes back to the United States. So it doesn't change things. We've also talked about, what can we do about going back to real money, gold and silver? But, that takes well, we've gone so far, that's horrendous.
Kyle, I've got a quick question for you. Can you buy 22 long rifles at Walmart in Montana?
Not once have I been able to get any.
Very good. Kyle, thank you so much for being with us. So, Captain John Ragan, I had this vision. And so in this vision, Donald Trump calls for a meeting. He invites Winchester and Remington and CCI, and he says, hey, guys, I remember learning how to shoot a .22 rifle when I was a child. Those were great memories. I surely think it'd be nice if you guys would start making them available to the villagers again. And that's the end of the meeting. Wouldn't that be nice? Do you think they'd get the hint? Because I have been to the Chinese factory outlet for years, and they don't have them. They don't have 22s, for the most part. I was able to get them once, and that was because the woman was just putting them on the shelf. And Kyle said he hasn't been able to get them. So when I go to the Chinese factory outlet, every once in a while I'll say, so you have any 22s? And they always say, no. So you ever get them? And the last time I asked was several weeks ago, and the gal behind the counter had a couple of minutes for me, and she said, we get like one box every couple of months. One box every couple of months. Can you imagine? So they still have shelf space for 22 long rifles in the milk cartons, and they get one box every couple of months. That does not seem like something that Walmart would do. Something is really up there. Having shelf space for something they get every couple of months that probably sells within minutes does not sound like a good use of shelving space, because there's something up there, and I still don't know what it is. John, back to you.
Now I'm going to try and get through work like a peasant, underemployment, and nuclear winter and preparedness. Research shows that the average American worker took just 16.2 days vacation in 2015. In 13th century, English peasants enjoyed 150 days off a year. And then that got me wondering about taxation, so I looked up Wikipedia. By the middle of the 13th century, tax on movable property had become fixed by convention at a 15th, which would be 6.6% for those in the country, and a 10% for those living in towns. Today, government spending is more than 35% of GDP, and we know that GDP is much more than what income is. So something higher than 35% of our income goes to feed the government today. The peasants had it good. And to get into nuclear winter, and this article references a recent study, which is from April of 2014. Our eyes have been fixed on Syria and Ukraine as possible starting points, and there's another one that is going on that doesn't get as much media attention, and that's what's the tensions between Pakistan and India. And what happens if there's a limited nuclear war, just 100 nuclear warheads used, that'd be, basically say 50 from each side. Well, this says that there would be years worth of cooling, which would be devastating to growing crops, and an increase in radiation because depleting the ozone layer, which would be devastating for plants and animals. And this would be a difference of 1.6 degrees Celsius the first 5 years, which means if you can't grow food, you have to have it stored. And if you don't know how to raise food, you've got at least a 3-year learning curve. So to me, that would translate into, if you're not already raising your own food, you need to have at least 8 years of food stored up should India and Pakistan go to nuclear war.
And with the die-off, what about the grid? How's that grid going to keep running? And how are we going to still have electricity? And how are we going to cool those reactors with diesel fuel that's needed to shut them down? Big problems, John. Big problems. So, class, the bottom line is don't stop preparing. Don't stop your vigilant efforts to protect you and your family just because Donald Trump has been selected. I'm delighted he was selected, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't mean that I have turned away from preparing. Captain John Ragan, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much for all of your hard work in preparing the lessons. And if you'd like to go to the website, eze33.org, eze33.org, or thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.